This is a very special announcement for a very special user called MrPHDinEnglish, who has written several dozen notes and comments complaining because I did not care for his friend's fanfiction, Start of Something New. Now, I know what you're all thinking. This user must be an older man with a doctorate in English. Oh, Linny, he's far more qualified than you are. He's got a doctorate in English. You've only got your bachelor's degree. MrPHDinEnglish is a teenage girl who does not have a doctorate in English. Her friend is also a teenage girl. MrPHDinEnglish and her friend are probably still in high school. In fact, MrPHDinEnglish is none other than YouTube user Princess Do-Gooder #1, who left me this note.
Hey, FanFiction Critic, why don't you do my story next? It's under Princess Do-Gooder, and it's called Mr. Monk and the Heartbreaking Decision. You can email me at hejustssayswait@yahoo.com before you do it. BC, I guarantee you won't find anything wrong, W it.
Darling, you spelled guarantee the wrong way, which basically guarantees that I will find something wrong with your story. Probably the spelling. Also, stop denying that you are Princess Do-Gooder #1. You must think I am rock stupid. The email address in this comment matches up with an email address provided in one of the FanFiction.net profiles that supposedly belongs to MrPHDinEnglish. What are the odds that Princess Do-Gooder #1 and MrPHDinEnglish would have the same email? Well, if they were the same person, those odds would be quite good. Here's a hint. Don't lie if you can't get away with it. Now, before I begin proper, I'm going to talk briefly about Start of Something New, which, as you may recall, was some boring Rent fanfiction that I reviewed. Was it the worst story I've ever reviewed? Not by a long shot. I've read and reviewed far worse things. However, it's not a good story either. It's boring and predictable. The characters and situations are bland. I get that this author wanted nice things to happen to her favorite characters, but this was boring and uninteresting to the point where it was actually quite painful to read. Nothing happened. There was no drama or conflict. It also violated canon in a lot of ways that I won't go into here. And if you don't like what I had to say about it, then you probably won't like what they were saying about it on LiveJournal. Let me back up and explain. There's a group on LiveJournal called Badfic Quotes, and sometimes I go there to find terrible fanfiction. Badfic Quotes not only provides a synopsis of the fanfiction, but also links. This is super helpful to me because I have no free time at all. And that's where I found this story. Here are a few things that the LiveJournal group had to say about Start of Something New. I like how the author has to preface the story by telling us that one of the most pivotal pieces of plot has been removed. You know, the AIDS thing, the thing that Angel dies from, Angel dying being the reason Mark makes his movie, the reason, the entire end of the musical happens. Oh, BTW, April was pregnant for the normal time, had the baby, then died, the end! Smiley face. And then they got married and moved into a big house with a picket fence and had 2.3 more children and bought a minivan and never actually met anyone else from the musical and never did heroin or have AIDS and Mimi was never a stripper and lived happily ever after, the end. I mean, how can you even call this a Rent fic? It had 3 characters from the musical in it, whose only actual ties to the musical are 1. The same names, 2. Roger and April dated one time, 3. Roger likes music. The group on LiveJournal found this story bland, predictable, and uninteresting as well. They say that if you can't take the heat, then you should stay out of the kitchen. But the same applies to the internet. If you can't handle criticism, flames, trolls, or people talking negatively about you, then you should not be on the internet. And in the grand scheme of things, someone commenting negatively about your fanfiction isn't the worst thing that could happen to you. I've been in creative writing classes where my peers have torn my original fiction to shreds, and although it hurt my feelings, it made me sit back and re-examine my own work. I realized that my work was flawed. I realized that certain things that I happened to think were clever and witty were, in reality, stupid and cliché. I didn't give up writing, though. I went back and fixed the story. I found that if more than one person gives the same criticism about a story, then chances are it's something you need to fix. And here's another thing that is really annoying me to no end here. Mr. PhD in English is also accusing me of telling her and her friend to drop dead. I have never made that threat to these individuals. I have never made that threat to anybody, ever. Don't you dare run around telling people that I've threatened you in any way, Mr. PhD in English, because I haven't. Now, Mr. PhD in English has been telling me that I won't find anything wrong with her fan fiction. Apparently, her fan fiction is practically perfect in every way, and if I was to read it, I'd have no choice but to give it a glowing review and heap praise upon her. Here's the thing, honey. I don't want to read your fan fiction, and I certainly don't want to review it. Why, do you ask? Here's the thing. You're being so obnoxious that I'm starting to hate you, and I won't be able to review your fan fiction objectively. I would try to find things wrong with it just so I could chew you out, and that's not something I want to do. That's why I don't review fan fiction written by people I know. I'm not going to offer up a tainted review. So in short, Mr. PhD in English, get off your high horse and grow up. You're making a huge deal out of something that really isn't important. Watch some other internet reviewers and see how nice they are. I wasn't going to bring this up, but have you seen that there nostalgia critic? He never says anything nice, but do you think Joel Schumacher or that guy who directed North are getting bent out of shape? No, they're not. They have better things to do than waste their time fretting over what somebody on the internet has to say about them, and I suggest that you do the same. You keep asking me how I would feel if I received criticism, but here's the thing. I have received criticism. It's ranged from helpful criticism, for example, when everyone was complaining about the computer program that I used to use to read the fan fiction, I went out and got a new one, and it worked much better, to flat-out insults, like that guy who called me a dyke. Was I pissed off when he called me a dyke? You bet I was. But I dealt with it, and I moved on. You and your friend need to do the same. Harassing me like this will not make me change my mind about your friend's story. If anything, it makes me like it even less. Grow up and move on. Oh, and stop saying that you have a doctorate in English. It makes it sound like you're trying to one-up me, which in turn makes you seem very immature. I'm so glad we had this talk.